Hi, everyone. I am Anna Hollander Bird. I am a licensed therapist and coach, and I am an expert in dealing with your narcissistic, personality disordered, or just plain difficult parent. So, I am trying to make these episodes more casual, more welcoming, because I know this is a hard topic for us to dig into. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the damned if you do or damned if you don't thing that you read about a lot with borderline personality disorder, and really applies to if you have a borderline parent or if you just have a personality disorder parent, specifically in regards to when you succeed. So I don't know about for you, but for me, I've been thinking about this and talking a lot to clients about this with their own relationships with their parents, about how success can be a bit threatening to your relationship with your parent. Now, I think that if you tried to talk, if my mom were to hear this episode, she'd be very offended, right? Because, of course, this isn't to say that she is a quote bad parent. And again, something I try to do is not do absolutes with how I label my parent, because I know that it's easy to be judgmental. That doesn't mean I don't have strong feelings and beliefs about it, which I talk about in a lot of my videos. But we're not here to vilify our parent. But what I do want to say is that, a lot of growing up for me was trying to get acknowledgement and love from them. I had a parent die very abruptly at a very young age, and I think that just spun me into a situation where I really wanted to make sure that my living parent was okay. And also I had a step parent who was kind of withdrawn and older and already had his own children in a much earlier time in his life, so could feel a little bit rejecting to me. So I want to say that I think a lot of like my hobbies and interests, I do a lot in like the performing arts space, and also, this being creative here is because, I wanted to be seen and I wanted to be good enough. And I think the theme of being good enough is something so many of people that might call themselves adult children, and that could be what we call adult children of a narcissistic parent, or just family dysfunction, or an alcoholic parent, or a mentally ill parent. Just a situation where all your attachment needs, all your childhood needs, or most of them just weren't really quite being met. And sometimes it's hard to discern. Like sometimes that's why a lot of this stuff we conclude when we're older, is because growing up, we don't quite know what the norm is, what a parent should be doing. And a lot of times, like the way things are happening can feel normal. So just like back to the theme of succeeding, like I told my mom this past week about something I accomplished that I was super excited about. And on the one hand, I was really excited to share it because I know that she's seen my journey and how much I've worked towards these certain goals. And although it was nice to talk about it, I did sense there was a point where, was she happy for me or was she kind of laughing at me? Because she literally kind of laughed at a point where I was just telling her something positive, which I thought was kind of weird, and it left me with a little bit of a strange feeling. Now, I'm not telling you this to say this is the worst thing, by the way, that has ever happened to me with my mom, because it certainly isn't, but I think it's just a simple example of what this looks like, where you're left feeling like even if you have a positive interaction with them, afterwards you're wondering, like, what just happened? Were they happy for me or were they laughing at me? And I think that's in part because the dynamic with dealing with someone narcissistic is that they're on top, right? Even if it's just that you make sure that you kind of position yourself, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, so they can be the most successful one, the prettiest, maybe the most talented, where maybe you don't talk about your successes, or maybe like, I think sometimes for me, like I sometimes struggle with taking the time to dress up nicely or to do certain things that I think for some people are easier, because I think in a way, it's easier for me to kind of try to not look very nice and kind of disappear into the background. And again, I'm sharing some personal things. So, you may relate or you may not relate, but you may relate in some other way if this isn't exactly how you relate. But then I was talking too about some other times in my life where I've been really struggling, and how when I'm struggling, sometimes the relationship temporarily improves because then it feels like I need her. And again, let me just say, I am not at all trying to judge what it's like to have an adult child. I'm sure it is not easy for people that, grew up, like my mother is in her mid 70s, in the 50s, in the 60s, to kind of be a parent to an adult. And there are big books on this topic, by the way, right? There are books that generation can read on how to better communicate with adults. Like for me, I'm almost, I'm in my late 30s now. So, I think there are ways you can improve this. But again, I'm not at all saying that I'm trying to judge. I'm just trying to use this to make a point, which is that sometimes when I've struggled in the past, it feels like it's easier to connect with her because that's a more familiar dynamic for her. So it's something like I work on in my own personal work a lot of times, is how to take up a little more space and room. In my 20s, I had quite a bad eating disorder, and it took me a long time to recover. And I think that in part, looking back on that, like some of the, what we would call in therapy, some of the secondary gain, like what are we getting from the behavior that could be considered positive even if we're struggling, was that she was a little more gentle and kind with me. Because a lot of times she would just say, oh, you're fine, you're good. And a lot of times I was good. But sometimes, like all of us, we could need comfort, and we can need softness, and we can need our parent to just understand that things are harder than they might seem, right? So I don't know if anyone relates to this theme about, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, meaning that when you succeed, it's kind of bad for the relationship, but when you're struggling, it can also be bad for the relationship, because obviously we don't want to live our lives in constant struggle, right? But yet sometimes that's a more familiar dynamic if you're an adult child, because sometimes it gets your narcissistic or personality disordered parent to pay attention. And this is not something I've only seen within myself, but with many, many people that I've worked with, which is that it is hard to get their narcissistic parents' attention. And it is a very, very painful thing to feel rejected and unseen by them. So sometimes psychologically, subconsciously, we might kind of have some creative ways to get their attention. So again, I just want to give a disclaimer that if this is relatable to you, wonderful. But a lot of this, why I use my own personal story, is it's a way to make an example to get you thinking about if it's a theme you relate to. But again, it doesn't have to look exactly the same way. Like it could look like the way I'm describing, like I'm saying with my 20s and an eating disorder, or it could just look like not sharing accomplishments with your parent because you're kind of feeling like if you do, that might rain on their parade. And so you kind of have to hide out and just kind of pretend that things aren't going so well for you, so that the focus can just be on them. It could just look that simple. So hope this is helpful. And I'm hopefully going to be putting out a lot more content. I also have a free mini course that you can check out in my bio. And then also I offer workshops, and I offer different things. So please sign up for my email list, and I would love to keep in touch. Thank you.